Hello everyone. My name is Fear Dragon, and welcome to another Modest Musings. Now, first thing I'm going to address, because this is something that I have gotten a few times now. Why are your eyes so red in all of these? It's usually because I'm recording these about 10 to 15 minutes after I've woken up. And usually because I've been postponing doing the vlog the night before, and I do it about 20-30 minutes before it actually gets uploaded. But okay, anyways, today's topic is going to be about casting styles and specifically talking about the game versus not talking about the game and the kind of focus and balance between the two. So first thing I want to talk about is the fact that a lot of commentators will get a feedback of varying kinds of descriptions saying, oh, you should do this, you should do this. And what's really difficult about giving commentators feedback is that when you give them feedback, there's two types of feedback in my mind. There's absolute truth feedback, which is kind of a little bit more of an exaggeration than it really is. Absolute truth feedback means these are just generally things that are true and you should just do, right? Not stumbling over your words, not saying incorrect things about StarCraft, like saying concretely, a stalker does 25 damage or something like this, just straight up incorrect. Things like that are absolute truths. Now, a lot of the feedback that commentators generally get, though, are what I call stylistic preferences. Saying things like, I wish that this commentator would talk less about things unrelated to the game. That's a really common piece of feedback for many commentators out there. I've even seen Tastosis themselves actually get that feedback before, but you have to keep in mind that is a stylistic preference. Although there are a lot of people who are very vocal about saying, I wish they would talk about the game more, that is oftentimes, in my experience, the vocal minority. And not, I guess minority is not really the correct word for it, but it is the more vocal section, and there is an unvocal section that actually enjoys a lot of that talk about Pokemon and Digimon and all kinds of other random topics. Because one of the really, really fascinating things when you get into that whole discussion is that when you have a commentator that can provide entertainment value without talking about the game, there are advantages and disadvantages that come with that versus having a commentator that is nearly solely focused on the game. So the example I'm going to use, please don't take this too seriously. I'm not trying to criticize or anything. I'm just kind of picking my own brain about what I think about the different commentary styles. But I like to consider myself to be someone that generally tries to focus very much on the game. That is a stylistic preference for myself and the commentary style that I like to do. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean it's better or worse. It's a different stylistic preference than someone that likes to go off topic and talk about a lot of other things and provide that entertainment value from the source of themselves. So I'll use Base Trade TV as an example because I know that they tend to do that a lot. You could easily use a lot of other commentators for either one of us. But one of the difficulties that comes with talking purely about the game is that when you're only talking or primarily just talking about the game and what's happening in front of you, there's this kind of dangerous line you have to walk where if you're only talking about what's in front of you, when there isn't anything interesting or entertaining going on in the game itself, you are going to be at a bit of a loss. You're not going to be providing entertaining content. You're not going to be gripping viewers oftentimes. And this just straight up is going to happen. Occasionally, especially when you're doing things like open brackets and talking about lots of different players, and maybe it's two players that you don't even know are being commentated or covered, then it's very difficult to build that kind of narrative for them, and maybe it's just a very, very slow, boring macro game. Sure, there's a lot that you can talk about in StarCraft, but at a certain point, when you've seen the same build hundreds and thousands of times, like, okay, cool, guys, it's a 2-1-1, and the Zerg player is playing pretty defensive. What are you supposed to do, and what are you supposed to talk about in those opening things? There's very little that you can draw upon, and this is where, in my commentary style, I try and specialize in, for example, the North American scene, maybe a couple of European players I have a bit more experience with and everything. But that's where, for example, if I see that 2-1-1, I get to talk about Masa, and even though, yeah, he's doing a 2-1-1, what kind of player is Masa? What's his backstory? What kind of success has he gotten? I get to talk about things that are not directly related to the game, but related to the players. But still, it's very important to note that the ultimate entertainment value is being derived from the source of the players themselves being entertaining. If you have two players that you don't know very much about, you don't have that research done beforehand, either through experience or deliberate research because you knew who was going to be playing, that sort of style starts to fall apart very quickly. As soon as you enter not so entertaining games, it can still hold up a little bit with general history and like knowing the game and knowing the meta. You can talk about things that are not directly happening in that game, but maybe triggers and things of things that aren't happening. Protoss players tend to go for big charge lot attacks now, but this player is still sticking around with adepts. That's something you can talk about. Even if adepts are a pretty normal thing, you get to talk about the differences in what doesn't exist in that game. So there are things, little tricks you can use to get by, but you can see the ultimate problem that arises is that you have to have a lot of research and preparation done, oftentimes around the players or the meta or just a lot of other things. And one of the big advantages that you get when you are an entertaining person in and of yourself, very much contrary to my style, where I definitely don't really try and meet this criteria, nor do I think I would would I do a very good job of it. But when you can hold discussions that aren't always directly tied to the game, and sometimes they are, of course, sometimes they are. Otherwise, you would just be laying over a podcast or something over a game of StarCraft instead of commentating it. But one thing that base trade does is when there are those downtime periods where there's not a whole lot going on, they don't really have a lot to say about the game. They have other topics they talk about, and they try and introduce stimulating, engaging conversation to keep viewers interested. And they aren't reliant on whatever the players are doing. You could have the most boring 25-minute no rush game, and they will still oftentimes produce entertaining and gripping content, at least for the people who are interested in that. And that has a lot of value because you have to remember the context of it is I said a lot of my stuff is revolving around North American players or like a very specific subset of players that I know a lot about. I know more about like North American meta. Sometimes I'll do some of the European stuff with EU ladder heroes. Occasionally I'll do some Korean stuff, but even the Korean stuff I feel pretty limited in. Whereas base trade is running events for North America, Europe, Korea. Sometimes they have people from the sea regions participating in their events. Sometimes they have Chinese and Taiwanese players participating in some of the Korean events. They're covering such a wide range of players and backstories that is in all these open bracket formats. And you'll notice that's one of the key things. They oftentimes are covering open bracket events. And so it's so difficult going in that situation and coming out prepared with all of these backstories and details about players. So their style is very fitting for the type of content that they do. If you look at actually most of the events that I cover, besides like even I suppose to an extent WCS North America, where kind of just sticking with the players that I know, and there's a guarantee that a lot of the players I do know will be there. But a lot of the events that I myself run are invites, or it has a very limited selection of players that qualify, and those are the players that I only have to do any kind of preparation for. If I don't know a whole lot about them, I can ask around about them, etc. It's a much more feasible thing for me to do because I have that preparation time before the event, and base trade wouldn't with an open bracket. Now, one of the things that makes Artosis such a legendary commentary duo is the fact that they are masters of darting between these two different styles. Really common thing that people used to talk about, I don't really hear talk about it too much anymore, is the kind of difference between Tasteless and Artosis in a round of 16 group stage match versus a GSL finals. In a round of 16 group stage match, they actually commentate a lot more similarly to base trade. They're going off topic, they're finding that there are points in time that don't have a lot going on, and they sound a lot more like two friends who are enjoying a game. And occasionally, yeah, when you're enjoying something with some friends, you're not always going to be talking 100% about the game. You'll make jokes about the game, you'll have a good time, and that's kind of a lot of the big focus. If there's something really interesting going on, awesome, you get to talk about the game a little bit more, but a lot of time it's stuff that has very little to do with the actual game itself and the game in front of them. But in a grand final situation, there's a lot more context that's been brought forth. And Tasteless and Artosis are amazing in a grand finals. I think they are definitely one of the best two commentators, or sorry, not one of the best. They are the best two commentators, or at least two of the best two commentators in a grand final situation, just because they can turn it on like that. They know how to draw upon those storylines that have been built up, and they build this sense of epicness around the game itself and have very, very little focus on outside of game things besides, talking about the players and those kind of things. They don't get too distracted by outside conversation. And that's really, really impressive because it's not easy to balance those two different styles. It comes with a lot of experience, a lot of practice, and a lot of trust also in your co-commentator, knowing exactly when's the right time to talk about the game versus not. And really, really have a profound appreciation for that. The more and more I watch Tasteless and Artosis kind of turning that switch on and off, it really ends up impressing me quite a bit. But anyways, that's kind of my talk for today. I very much consider myself to be one of the people that talks a lot more about the game, but that definitely has its weaknesses, and that's something that I have to overcome in a lot of ways with more preparation work, and I guess just learning more about the game. Something that I think I still need to work on a good bit. But anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed that. That is going to be it for today, and let's see, any news or anything? I'm going to see if I can cover any of the WCS EU stuff, but probably pretty unlikely. I have work and whatnot, so them's the breaks. But Ladder Heroes should be happening pretty soon. I believe that I have a tentative date of the 11th for the the April monthly finals, which is so ridiculously late because challengers took up all the time slots. There's no way for me to really schedule anything. That plus I was going to a wedding. So we'll probably have that as well as the May monthly finals coming up sometime this month. So we might actually have 4 Ladder Heroes monthly finals this month in the month of June. So look forward to that. But yeah, my name is Fear Dragon. I'll see you guys next time.